from the victory. No power of hell can stand against me. 'Cause I've seen this fight from the victory. I will not fear, you are with me. I see this fight from the victory. No power of hell can stand against me. 'Cause I've seen this fight from the victory. You never fail, you never. I'll trust your name, the greater fear that you will come through. You always do. I'll trust your name, the greater fear.
All right, give a high five, shake a hand, find someone near you, just say hello. Alrighty, thank you guys all for coming and worshiping with us at the Church at Estrella. You guys could have a seat. My name is Ryan. I'm on the worship team here, and I also work with the students here at the Church at Estrella. A lot of fun. We love it here. It's always a great time. A few things. So on your seat, there should be a welcome card. You just fill out your name, phone number, and write down a prayer request. And if you're a first-time guest, just write your name, phone number, and your email, because we're going to send you a very special email. And that email is going to be a $5, so we're going to be giving to a, what is it?
Charity.
A charity. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I forget words sometimes. I'm the youth guy, you know. I'm a little.
Gotcha.
So we're going to donate $5 to a charity of your choice. We have 4 to choose from. One of them is for presents for Christmas to kids who parents can't really afford them, and we're really looking forward to this. So just put your email down. We'll send you that email. Donate $5 on your behalf. So a few announcements. So we had Scream Fest this past week, and we had almost 20 volunteers come out and served 1,200 of our community. It was amazing, so much fun just giving out candy to the kids, playing games. It was awesome. Second thing is we have one more volunteer opportunity this month, which is going to be our trunk or treat. Do we have the slides for those? No? All right. So trunk or treat, it's going to be on Halloween. We're looking for 5 more trunks that are going to be decorated. We're going to hand out candy, and then we need 2 people who are going to be driving a train around. That is from 6 to 8 p.m., and you can sign up on our Church Center app. Second thing is, ladies, who excited for the next ladies event? Woo! Come on. So the next event is going to be November 2nd. It's going to be from 2 to 4 p.m. You guys are going to be making wreaths for the Estrella Living, which is a nursing home in our community, where I think, how many are we doing again? I forget. It's somewhere in my notes, but I don't want to look too much. So the next thing is, the reason I'm mainly up here and speaking, is we have our student ministry kickoff next Sunday. It's going to be from 5 to 6:30. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be completely donut themed. We're going to have dozens of donuts, and we all know kids love donuts. So talking to the tech booth over there, Jack and Benton. I don't know if there's any other students in the room right now, but we're starting that off next Sunday. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get back to some God-honoring worship. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you just for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to come to you, worship you, and hear your word this morning. I just pray everything goes smoothly, and I hope Charles
good father, isn't he? You're the one who walked on water, and you calm the raging seas. You command the highest mountains to fall upon your knees. You're the one who welcomes sinners, and you open blinded eyes.
Well, welcome back. Glad you guys are here for our final week of Happy. Man, I tell you what, I was standing in the back of the room on that last song and just soaking in with what the team was just singing over the top of us. Man, God's love is fighting for us, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. But so glad that you guys are here for our last week of being happy. Next week, we have to go back to our normal lives of being sad. I'm sorry. But man, this series has been a really, really great series, and we've had an excellent time looking at what Jesus said, really not just what Jesus said, but really what the whole Bible has been saying about what makes you and I happy. And today we're going to kind of come full circle, all right? So if you were here week one, then hopefully you'll remember some of this stuff. If you weren't here week one, well, shame on you, all right? I'm just kidding. I know there's a bunch of first-time friends that are here with us today, and I'm glad that you guys are here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to catch you up. So if you were here week one, help me out a little bit with some of this stuff, because we said some really important things in week one. In fact, one of them that we learned in week one is this, that happiness is more about than I was a little bit nervous. There was a little bit of a pause there as we came into it. I was like, great, we have to teach week one all over again. All right, good. So happiness is more about a who, not a what. All right, and we said this to kind of go along with that. We said that happiness is more about a who or that's true. Very good. That's my Dr. Seuss moment right there. Very good. I was hoping you guys were going to be able to like teach this for me today, help me out just a little bit, but maybe I'm going to have to dig in. It's okay. It's all right. We'll get there. Well, I want to warn you as we get ready to dive into today, all right, that today's big idea, all right? As we've worked through this entire series, most of these have been kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of see that, I agree with that, and not like that. Today's is one of the most counterintuitive things that we're going to talk about when it comes to this idea of things that make us happy, what it is that makes us happy. So as we come to it, I just want you to know that when we think about this, this is not the way that we're going to think about it, But some of you in this room, you're going to have experienced the truth that we're going to be talking about today. And when I say it, you're going to be like, oh, I know that to be true because I've experienced it in my own life. But he's right. That is counterintuitive to how we think about and how we work about in all of the world around us. And some of you, you're going to walk out of here and you're going to think that I had some sort of like agenda as to what it was that I was trying to do. Preschool. Sorry, I had a little cough there, something in my throat. You're going to think that I'm trying to push something on you, like setting up things, like setup team. I just have this little catch going on in my throat. We'll see if we can get that out. It's okay. But here's what I want you to know is that even if you've never experienced this, right? If you've never experienced this, you're going to think that it's so irrational, but it's truth about what it is that we're going to be talking about today. Now, I'm going to give you the bottom line right up front. So that those of you that want to, you can just walk right on out and we'll just continue on with them. Don't walk out, all right? At least hear me out on what it is. Bottom line. The bottom line is this. As long as you are all about you, you won't be happy. As long as you are all about you, you won't be happy. Let me see if I can put it a little bit different way. In other words, here's this. You is not at the center of happy. You is not at the center of happy. Look very close. The words you and me are not found anywhere in the word happy. Now, somebody told me a long time ago that phrase that I is not found in team. You ever heard that one before? Right? But I discovered somewhere along the way, maybe somebody pointed out to me that me is in team. Some of you, I've just blown up your world for the worse, right? You're just like, oh, I now have the answer to when they say I is not in team, but me is, right? But listen, if you look at the word happy, right? You, me, I, we, none of those things are found in the word happy. Because as long as you and as long as I, as long as we are all about me, about you, then we can't be happy. Not just won't be happy, right? But we can't be happy because you can't fulfill your own life. It's an impossibility. You cannot fulfill your own life. In fact, let's just do a little thought project for a second, all right? Let's just pretend like you could get yourself exactly the way that you wanted, right? You could be the right size. For some of us, that's a big deal, right? You could be, you could have like the perfect hair. You could have the perfect house. You could have the perfect car. You could have all of those things. Everything could be perfect. You still wouldn't be happy. And this is really kind of so counterintuitive, right? This idea of that I wouldn't be enough, because really I think most of us in this room think that, if I could just get certain things, if I could just get things certain ways, if I could just have a certain health, if I could have a certain look, if I could, whatever it is, right? Then possibly, probably, I've convinced myself that I would be happy. But the truth is, and I think most of us that know this kind of sitting in the room, is the truth is that you can't acquire, right? You can't consume, you can't exercise your way into happiness. It's not a possibility. You can't acquire, you can't consume, or even exercise your way into happiness. But this is really tricky, all right? And so here's what I want to do. I want to just talk about this for just a few minutes, and then we'll dive into where we're going at today. But this is a really, really deceitful thing that the world throws at us, because we look at other people. In fact, I'm not just going to say you. I look at other people, right? And I see things that are going on in their world, and I'm like, oh man, if I just had that, if I just had like maybe just 10% of the money that they had, right? I don't even have to have all of it, just like a portion of what they had. If I had kids that were like that, right? I have a 2-year-old that if anybody wants her for a couple of hours, I'm happy to. I love her, but I'm just saying, what happens is we begin to look at all of the stuff that other people consume. And I don't just mean like eat, right? I'm talking about, a couple weeks ago we had that word mammon, where we talked about all things that we consume and that we try to consume them for us. And so if we look at all of these things that other people consume, and when we tell ourselves, right, if I could just get some of that, if I could just live a little bit like that, then I would be happy, right? And sometimes, really, most of the time, here's what happens, is we don't look at just one person, right? We look at a whole bunch of people. And we begin to say, here's what I want. I want to take the best part of that person over there, right? And I want to take the best part of this person over here. And we begin to build, Andy calls it, Andy Stanley, the guy who wrote this whole series that we've kind of been pulling from. He wrote the book that if you've been in a group, we've been together. He calls this a composite person. A composite person, right? And a composite person is this. It's an imaginary being, right, that is made up of other people's best parts. And we do this, right? We look at, oh, they look so happy and they have all of this stuff and they look so good. Facebook, right? Anybody ever post our best pictures on Facebook? And I've also noticed that we don't read what's on Facebook. We just scroll for pictures, right? If I want to get 100 likes, I put up a good picture of my family, cute kiddos, right? And everybody goes, ding, 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 ding. Put up some profound statement, crickets. What? Because here's what it is that's going on, is that we're looking for, right? We're looking for that best component that we want to add to our lives to say, hey, I want to be more like, I wish I had, I want this, I want that. If I could just have his beard, right? Caleb's got a great beard. And I cannot grow a beard for anything. Even though No Shave November is right around the corner, this is about as good as it gets right here, all right? I know, baby face me, I can't do it. My wife doesn't want a big hairy beard because I'd be out of luck, all right? So, but we look at all these people and we say, if I could just have all of these things, and if I could pick and choose and make this kind of, this compilation, this composite of a person, then I would be happy. I would be happy. You know, this time of the year, there's this image that helps us to understand what a composite person is. Like, what? There is? Yeah. You see, there's this imaginary being that is actually made up of all kinds of composite parts. It's taking what was the best parts of all of these different people and stitching them together. And a bolt of lightning brought this being to life. You know who I'm talking about? Yeah, Frankenstein, that guy, right? He's the image of a composite person. So the composite that you're making, that you're trying to be, is a monster. It's a monster. Because when we take the best parts of everybody, we lose the things that are there that make us all unique. Because listen, most of us, if we were honest about it, most of us would not take and hit the like clone button of somebody else. We would not say, here's the person that I want to be. I want to take all of their troubles, all of their everything. We're like, no. I just want this from them. And we're like, no, that's not how it works. See, you either get all or nothing. We'd be like, oh, I don't really know that I want all of that, right? Because we understand that they're flawed just like. Here's the real scary thing. Because not only does our composite person, not only is it a monster that can consume us, right, and consume others and destroy everything around us, but the person that you're probably stealing a best part from is looking at you and stealing something from you too. Now think about how crazy that is for just a second, right? The person who you're looking at and saying, if I could just have this and be like this, they're in turn looking at you and saying, if I could just have this from them, right? My life would be so perfect. How crazy is that? Right? That we think that we can make this sort of a thing. And so the truth is that it doesn't matter. Even if we could reach perfection on what this composite person is, the truth is that they're a monster who's just waiting to consume us instead of the other way around of us being able to consume and be happy. Now, so here it is. Here's that counterintuitive idea, that thing that, you know, we think that we can acquire, we think that we can consume, we think that we can exercise our way into happiness, but the truth is that we can't. But there is something that you can do that leads towards happiness. You can serve and volunteer your way to happiness. Now, I know some of you are like, oh, where's the doors? I understand where he's going with this thing now. All right, just hear me out. Hear me out. All right, there probably is some agenda here, and it's okay. But I want you to hear this just absolutely amazing truth about this. Because it doesn't just come from me on this sort of idea about, hey, what I need is more people who serve here. And if they would serve, I would be happier. That's not where this is coming from, okay? In fact, there is an entire scientific research field that for the last 50 years, not just the last 3 or 4 months, the last 50 years has been conducting research about what makes people happy. In fact, the correlation has been so strong between the idea about what makes people happy is that when they can give their life away in some sort of fashion or form, when they can volunteer and serve, that they have begun to have like spin-off studies. In fact, one of them that I loved was some like Aboriginal tribe people, right? They were teenagers. And they took them, and they took a group of them, and they began to have them to serve and to lead out in opportunities. And they had a whole other group of them that they gave no opportunities to. And at the end of the study, the group that had forced service was happy, and the group who they didn't was not. What? Andy gives another example, and I went looking all over to find it, but he was sitting in a hospital room waiting to go in and pray with somebody, and was looking, and there on the table was 5 steps to beating cancer. And he flipped it open and he reads it. And steps 3 and 4 were volunteer and mentor somebody else. What? And it goes on because the American Cancer Society, which I did find this, says that, listen, when you volunteer, when you serve, when you do things that are giving yourself away into other capacities, you have an immune response that takes place in your body, and it raises your physical health. What? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Now, here's one of my favorites. I like Dirty Little Secrets. Do you like Dirty Little Secrets? Yeah. I always wondered why it was that National Honor Society, why it was that they required for all of their kids who are in NHS to do service projects, right? I was like, it's all about academics. Why in the world are they requiring us to do a service project? This doesn't make any sense. And here's what it is that they discovered. They discovered that when you make smart students serve, it actually raises both of their IQ and their EQ. So not only their intelligent quotient, but their emotional quotient. And so what happens is that smart kids become smarter. Now hang on, it gets better. Parents, kids, you probably just ought to cover your ears on this one, all right? Because this is no good for you. But parents, this is good news for you. Because check this out. Here's what the research said. It went one step even further. It said it doesn't matter the motivation or the attitude through which the kids engaged in the service or volunteer. So if as a parent, you drag your kid kicking and screaming to go serve in the preschool, right? Or to show up to help and set up, or wherever it is that they're serving, that those benefits of becoming smarter, of all of the things that go along with volunteering and serving, still showed up. It doesn't matter what the motivation was behind it. I know, all you kids are doomed. That's what just happened. I used to love you, Jack. Sorry. Right? So every single one of these studies, every single one of the studies comes down to this. They had the same conclusion, something along the lines of this. The people who volunteer, right? People who volunteer find some way during the course of their life to be selfless, if they can do that they are healthier mentally, that they are healthier physically, that they have higher self-esteem, they live longer, and they have a better quality of life. It also showed, and these studies have been done as well, it didn't matter the age that somebody began to engage in that. The same qualities would show up. So it didn't matter if you were 16 or if you were 66. If you were volunteering and serving, the same things showed up on the scales. But how can that be? How can it be that our natural inclination, your natural inclination, my natural inclination to things is to acquire them, to consume them, to do everything we can to look at the research, the scientific research says that, listen, that's not the way. If you can figure out how to be selfless, that leads to a better sense of well-being and ultimately your health. And this selflessness, right, leads to happiness. Let that sink in for just a second. Selflessness leads to happiness. So here's the question. How? How in the world can this counterintuitive idea, why is it that it goes so against the grain of what we think? We think that we need to acquire and to grab and to get all of this stuff, to consume all of these things, to try to exercise our way into a better frame of mind. But instead it's this idea that we're supposed to be giving away everything that we have and all of our energies and our efforts, and that's what will make us happy. How is it that behaving selflessly actually makes us happier? Serving and how they're linked together. And so we know that this is not true because God didn't design us to be consumers. Right? That's operating from our brokenness, from our sinfulness. And ultimately, when I begin to believe that I am the one that is enough to fill myself up, right? When I begin to think that, it's wrong. Because I can't. It's impossible. So if you want to be happy, right? If you want to be happy, here's what you have to do. You have to figure out how to give yourself away. You have to figure out how to give yourself away because you'll never be happy. You can't be happy as long as it's all about you. Now, we've observed a lot of things. Talked about scientific research. But I want to add to this now. Right? Some of us, we go, hey, how do I even know if the Bible's true? Listen, you're going to look at some stuff that we're going to talk about from the Bible right now, and we've just added all of this truth that will confirm what the Bible already wrote 2,000 years ago. So we're going to look at it together. The Apostle Paul, he wrote a letter to some Christians that lived in Galatia. Right? Now, Galatia is a really fancy term to talk about a Roman province, right, that existed. And we have a letter from him, right? We call it a book in the Bible, but it's really just a letter that he wrote to these guys called Galatians. Now, Galatians is like, there's some heavy sledding in it because Paul, like, he doesn't pull any theological punches on stuff, right? He likes to hit it hard. And we're not going to dive into all of these theological terms today. So I hope that you're involved in a community group and had a chance to or will have a chance to talk about some of these things because it is some power-packed verses that we're going to dive into. And unfortunately, we're just going to dive right into the middle of all of this with not a whole lot of context around it, which can be very dangerous, all right? But here's all we're going to do. We're just going to see two different approaches to life that Paul highlights, all right? And I think you're going to see this drastic difference between the two of these. And so I hope that you'll go back and look at some of these. But here it is in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. We're going to look at these two different approaches to life that you and I still today, 2,000 years after Paul wrote this, have a chance to choose between to try to fill ourselves up. So here it is. Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. Paul writes, "The works of the flesh are evident," right? Now this little Greek word, all right, this little Greek word for flesh, sometimes I use the ESV translation. Most of the time when I'm up here, I'll tell you if I use something different. Sometimes I look at different things. But in other translations, I noticed that they'll call this the sinful nature, right? So Paul says, in other words, that the works or the acts of the sinful nature are evident. In other words, I don't have to even tell you what those things are, right? We all know what those things are. You know, if you could get away with whatever, right? If you could live your life however it is that you wanted to live it, if you knew that there were no consequences for the things that you were going to do, if nobody would judge you for the choices that you were going to make, if you could whatever, Paul says this is what would happen and this is what they would look like. These things are evident. Right? And even though he doesn't need to tell us what they are, he says, I'm going to tell you what they are anyways. I like Paul when he does that. He's like, they're evident. You know them. But in case you missed it, in case you're going to just be like, oh, that's not on the list. Surely that one's not. He's like, no, I'm going to name them all. So he does. He goes on and he says, here they are. He says sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry. And that's one of those big weird words. That's like one of those like Bible words that we don't really like know what it means all the time. And so I'm going to give you this like really low level definition of what idolatry is, because here's what idolatry is. Idolatry is trying to get the gods, little g, not big G, right? But sometimes we do this with big G too, but it's getting the gods to do my bidding, right? It's like asking them, like it's like the little tiki god that you have in your house for fertility, and you're like, here's what I want. I'm going to put you up in my house, and I'm going to beg for you to give me new babies, right? Because I put you in my house, and so that means that you're supposed to give me babies. And you know, some of us snicker at that, but that's idolatry. That's what it is. At its very base level. And sometimes we even do this when we pray to the big G God. Right? Not just these little made up things, but sometimes we approach big God and say, God, here's what I need from you. I want you to do this for me. I want you to do this for me. I'll do this, God, if you'll do this. Ever said that prayer? Oh, I have. And those are idolatrous prayers because we're trying to get God to do our bidding. Now, some of you just went, oh man. what am I supposed to pray then if that's the case? How am I supposed to pray? I'm so glad you asked that. Shameless plug. Next week, we're starting a brand new series where Jesus is going to teach us how to pray, right? So come back and we'll learn for the next 6 weeks straight from Jesus about what it looks like for us to pray so that we can try to avoid this idea of idolatrous prayers. I don't want to be that. I don't want to live in the flesh. And we're going to talk about that some more in just a second. But anyways, sorry. Like I said, shameless plug. Moving on. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, idolatry, witchcraft, right? In other words, trying to harness the forces of nature to do my bidding, right? It moves from trying to get gods to do my bidding all the way over to trying to get nature to do my bidding. And then hatred, discord, jealousy. Ooh, this is a good list, isn't it? Fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions. Ever got dissension in your house? Factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and all of the things like these. In other words, Paul says, look, if you were just to pick up your feet and kind of go with the flow of society, right? If you were to go with the flow of all of your natural inclinations in life, these are the things that they would look like. Maybe not all of them in your world, but at least some of these would show up. And then here's kind of the synopsis of everything that's in these two verses. And this is so important, right? I don't want you to miss this. But this is pleasure at somebody else's expense, right? When you give in to your selfishness, it is pleasure for you at someone else's expense. In other words, someone always pays the price when you give in to your natural, selfish inclinations. Even when you get away with it. Even when nobody seemingly knows about it. Even when you don't get caught. Even when nobody holds you accountable. I'm telling you, somebody still suffers. Let me use one of the ones that's called a harmless sin today, right? Pornography. Oh, it doesn't hurt anybody, right? Nobody knows that I'm engaged in that and that I'm looking at those sort of things or that I enjoy that sort of thing. It doesn't seem to hurt anybody, right? And the sad thing is that it's always at the expense of the person who's on the other side of the screen. You may not know them. You may not be able to see them. Just 2 weeks ago, I was reading an article about a company who produced that sort of material. And they had numerous underage girls who had left their homes